Barrister Damboyi, I think we have defective knowledge has contributed principally to the backwardness of our nation. What should we put in place to avoid reoccurrences?
I think from all that have been said and discussed, one of the key things that each and every one of us have to take seriously is the issue of patriotism. One, patriotism in the sense that we need to develop a love for our nation. This word patriotism comes from the Greek word patra. And patra, by the Greek meaning, stands for loyalty to the political conception of the republic. That is associated with love for love, love for the rule of law, love for your nation, love for the development of your nation based on the belief of the political principle of the republic. And that is established basically for the interest of the common man. In the past, the Italians took that concept of patra too, but the concept is a kind of defense to the city by the citizens. Can a citizen defend a city if he doesn't believe in the city? We have to develop that patra. And patra translates to patriotism. Prof has he has spoken about government, he has spoken about politics, the economy. We've heard about the ills that are happening in our society. Where is patriotism? And patriotism has to do with love, loyalty, commitment. Your nation comes before any other thing. Today, the problem we have in this country is your religion comes before the nation. Religion comes before the nation. We've talked about cost. You are just a governor, you have about 50 PAs. There's no patriotism. Hope for Nigeria. I see hope. I see patriotism. I see it just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, when Baga could not be visited by any other person. Somebody said Baga must be open. I saw patriotism in people going out to give out their lives. Some people died. These are patriots. But patriotism is achievable when you have other compatriots. And that is the way forward. If our mentality takes that direction, I believe there will be a way out.
Patriotism is not loyalty to a politician, is not loyalty to government, is loyalty to your nation.
Yes.
And we have failed in that area. That fact is established everywhere. You see people worshiping politicians above and beyond the nation that the politicians are elected to serve. So how should we deal with that? Because I was going to ask you the definition of patriotism, but you have defined that in your answering my question. So what do we do to come back to that path of patriotism?
Yeah, I think the first thing is we look at ourselves as we used to live in the past. One, we must break barriers. There are barriers that have set us apart. I remember in the late 60s, late 60s, 70s, the idea of Nigeria being a nation is not what we have today. Basically because I don't see the Igbo man as any other person, I see him as a Nigerian. We grew up understanding the fact that we have a nation. And this thing is embedded even in our national pledge. Take the words. When we go back into it, that will be the way forward for us as a nation.
Kaneng, where did we get it wrong in this nation? At what point? Where did we get it wrong?
I will say at different points, but probably a few decades ago, we are products of some negative, I belong to the school of thought that we have had negative colonial legacies that were left behind. Quick example is the concept of education and the concept of work. Prior to independence, my belief is that those who came and amalgamated Nigeria came as businessmen to serve their interest, no harm in that. We are the ones who don't seem to be displaying national interest or even defining what it is. But they came for their national interest. They do what some of us would like to call plundered, but they explored. And they trained individuals to be able to guard and provide. That's the history of the Nigerian army, for instance, and the history of the police, and the history of the civil service. So people were educated enough to be able to work in offices to drive that vision, the goal, the purpose of coming to explore Nigeria. And that, I believe, is one disconnect we've not been able to make. We should, after independence, have identified ourselves as a nation, not just by paying lip service, but saying, yes, we're going to be a nation, and defining our strategy as a nation going forward. Yakubu Gowon tried, after the Civil War, he came up with the 3 R's, but that was to survive, to bounce back from the Civil War, reconstruction, reconciliation, yes. But as a nation, we didn't get that. We have parents and grandparents who grew in the system, the old system, and transferred that legacy, that paradigm to other generations, down to our generation, that today the Nigerian youth believes they'll go to school, finish school, and a job is waiting. We are 60 years behind that kind of thinking. That's the fact. And that's part of why we are where we are. And we have, I'm coming from the angle of emotional intelligence as well as advocacy. We have filters. Many people here are filters. We all do. And our filters are our values, our decisions, our experiences, our attitudes. They form the filters. They help us process reality every single day. And we use things like generalization, distortion, and deletion to process reality because we have 2 million bits of information getting to our brains every second, whether we know it or not. What shapes our values is a combination of our environment, our upbringing, and our significant emotional experiences. So putting these 3 together for the average Nigerian, or now the multitude, about 200 million Nigerians, it is a dysfunctional mix. So we have shifted our values. We place more values on value on the male gender, for instance. We are very gender inequitable, if I can use that expression. It's true, and it comes from our interpretation of religious values and cultural values. That people will quote the Bible to dominate a particular individual or to take family decisions that demean or devalue a particular gender. For instance, we place more values on wealth, and how we get the wealth doesn't matter anymore. This is our current character. Is as long as you get it, it's fine. We don't have the spirit of volunteerism. We have a very entitled generation, and it started from probably our parents, then us, then our younger ones. In this audience, I believe many of us were born after the Civil War. For instance, many of us were probably born in past 66. And I believe that what we have picked up, our environment, upbringing, significant emotional experiences, are from our daily lives with our parents. So that has influenced our thinking. And a paradigm is formed usually by a set of activities or values or things that happen and nobody questions them. And others are born into that system and just continue in that system. And that's why I nodded when my brother at the end spoke about the price, the cost of governance being really high. It's ridiculous. We've been talking about it for years, and we need to face the reality. We have the thinking that, oh yes, I can just get into a political office and I'll be fine. I mean, if 70% of the budget is going for recurrent expenditure, which is just maintaining governance, then that's the place to go. So you find young people thinking, okay, let me just attach myself to a politician and I'll be fine. And I've often asked fellow youth and fellow Christians, is money your problem? Money is not the problem. If I give you a room full of cash, will all your problems go away? You start counting, maybe 60%, but you will still have problems. So money is not our problem. And that comes from the values. So we have a dysfunctional situation. We don't question our paradigms. We have the culture of, I'll start with the church, a culture of silence and tolerance. I'm glad that the church is beginning to speak up now, but in the past we did, really. We tolerated things that were wrong. And I believe that if the church were to be the church, the way we know the church, most of the problems of this country will disappear. That's the truth. Because we got it wrong when we picked up these values and embraced corruption. And by the way, the definition of corruption is the abuse of a position of trust. It doesn't have to be only about money. It could be between a father and a daughter, a neighbor and a neighbor. As long as anyone is abusing a position of trust, that person is corrupt. And if you check yourself, look at your neighbors, you'll find that there are elements of corruption in a lot of us. So is corruption in the church? Oh, I stand to be corrected, but I'll say absolutely yes. Because there have been people who have abused different positions. And it's not just one way, it's not just top down. It also has to do with us, the parishioners, us, the followers. So we got it wrong on a number of levels, especially with these other values that are negative from our culture, from our interpretation of what God says about development, which is quite twisted. Let me quickly say that we're in the business of development. You best liken it, to a racetrack. Like the Olympics, every country is represented by an individual running on two legs. Can you imagine Nigeria being represented by an individual with only one leg? Is the person likely to win the race? Absolutely not. Will they even finish the race? Maybe after the whole stadium has dispersed. So when we place value, more value on a specific class, a specific tribe, a specific gender, these are all forms of discrimination anyway by definition. Sure. Then we are getting it wrong, and it will take us a very long time before we get it right. But the good thing is we can hear, we have ears, and we're guided by doctrine, the Bible, which is profitable for everything. We even hear that even the CIA is picking strategies from the Bible. I don't know how true that is, but you realize that no matter who you are, for whatever form of guidance you want, you can find it in there. And we're not very strategic thinkers. If we are strategic thinkers with a sense of purpose, I wake up every day, what am I living for today? Is it just to get money to buy something to eat? We should go beyond that, is survival. If we're going to survive as a nation, it starts from the individual who has a sense of purpose. Why am I living? How am I influencing the people around me? And by the way, very quickly, we all have power. Power is not just in the hands of those who take decisions. They are authority figures. Some of them are not even leaders, because leaders are people at whatever level, whatever age, who can motivate and inspire other people. So, we have power, because power is influence. If you have any level of influence at whatever level, you have power. And I'm glad that we have platforms like this so that we can remind ourselves of some of these things, and perhaps we begin to get it right. So the list goes on and on, but let me just stop here.
Yeah. You have remarkably spoken. You have remarkably spoken. You have remarkably spoken, and I'm so impressed. I think they should make you the spokesperson to the president. Prof, where did we get it wrong in our educational system? Where did we get it wrong?
Well, thank you very much. I was going to say that getting it wrong has to be looked in the perspective of the different components of the nation state. Education being the mother industry, but the politics is the foundation. Let me just quickly say that the politics has also been distorted, because if you don't have the politics correctly, then every other thing else cannot be organized well. I don't believe, for instance, that the foundation of the Nigerian state is faulty, because in historical terms, there has never been a nation state that has absolutely been founded on 100% conducive situations. But the question always is, what do you do with the faulty foundations upon which the nation state was formed? And for Nigeria, I think that is where also we got it wrong. At the beginning, we had regionalism. We went to independence on the basis of regions. Remember when states were created in the 70s, those regions were broken down into smaller units to break the influence, the strong regional sentiments. And by the Second Republic, the politics became privatized. People were just about themselves and their families. And by the trajectory, if care is not taken, we'll go into a situation of political insanity, because individuals now are even betraying, even the political families are now crumbling. You hear godsons and godfathers fighting themselves. Some of the crises intra-political parties are even worse than inter-political party crises. So the crisis is really deeper than what we just see at the surface. And it is a fault that all of us have to take responsibility for. We hope that some things will happen in that regard. But most importantly, education that you mentioned. At independence, I think that we have run an education system essentially that was access-driven. We have done so well in terms of physical infrastructure. From one university, for instance, that we had in 1958, was it when University of Ibadan started? You know that we then had, between 1960 and 70, almost about 6 or 7 universities, which were called the first generation universities. Between 75 and 80, you had the second generation. Then later on, after 80, you have the universities of technology, which were then the third generation. Now we're in the fourth generation. And up till last week, I think more polytechnics and colleges of education were also being established by the federal government. So I think in terms of creation of access, in view of the increasing population of the nation's space, we have tried to provide physical infrastructures. But I think that with the kind of imbalance in financial commitments to education, because as the mother industry, there is a minimum requirement of enabling environment for education to be impactful in delivering outcomes in nation-building efforts. And that is where I think that we have to try and do our little best. UNESCO has given us a numeric figure of 26% for developing countries. And I kept on wondering why national conversations are not taking place, because the other speaker mentioned the pathetic situation where 70% of the income of the nation is going to stomachs of individuals in terms of, recurrent expenditure. And when we are talking about restructuring debate in this country, people do not even bother to bring those kind of issues to the table. They are talking about partitioning on the basis of ethnicity, regionalism, religion, and so on and so forth, when the real issues is the allocation of resources to productive sectors. There is no economy that has succeeded on the basis of this kind of structural imbalance. 70% going to whatever. So we need to come to the table to agree that we are going to commit the substantive percentage of our resources to development issues. Then at that point, we will now begin to talk about how do we now cut the excesses. This is where the issue of how much are politicians taking, how much are government officials taking, and then everybody down the line will now be cut down to size in such a way as to deliver an outcome, which is a balanced application of resources to nation building. So I think education got it wrong when we refuse to invest the right amount of resources to make sure that we have functional laboratories, workshops, and that our students can learn in enabling environments that will make them globally competitive. The interesting thing to find out now is that the same Nigerian students that are not doing well here, if you hear about the exploits that they do in UK and USA, you will be surprised. Some of the best brains in the Western world are Nigerian brains. So it shows that this country has a future, it has a hope, it has a human resources base that, if carefully harnessed, will produce results for development. But I think the resources have to be put there. Thank you.
Another thing that is that has so belittled us as a nation is our inability to deal with insurgency, inability to deal with cater properly for the lives and the properties of Nigerians. And most of the calamity that befall us as a nation are man-imposed. How do we come against that as a nation, barrister? Because the legal system itself is extremely faulty and is shaky by the days. It's almost coming to a collapse. So how do we regain that? How do we regain that?
I think we have everything in place to help this nation. Our problem is leadership. Chapter 4 of the Constitution makes provision for basic fundamental rights. Basic fundamental rights. Today, we have a nation where the rule of law is not respected. It is so sudden that individuals caught in the act, people risk their lives, get these individuals arrested, detained, rather than going through due process of law. The executive takes over the responsibility of judiciary. The police are there to implement the rule of law by arresting criminals. But once they play their role, somebody who has a different responsibility takes the role of the police. We had a situation where a governor was crying that within his state, he identified certain individuals. They were arrested, were being prosecuted, but the powers that are there directed that such people should be released. You get an individual, the court does not carry out its function because there are key blockages that does not allow the judge to carry out his function. Somebody is detained rightly based on facts surrounding his arrest. Quickly, a lawyer rushes to court to pursue his fundamental rights, not looking at the interests of the nation, which is paramount. This is a very serious offense, but as a counsel, you feel that because the provisions of the Constitution say he must have an access to a closest court within certain hours of time or days, rather than being patriotic enough to understand the weighty nature of the matter, you rush to it. Secondly, the judiciary does not even have that independence. So when we talk about this issue of insecurity and so on, what does the law put in place in checking all this? The law says that each and every one of us has right to what? To life. What the right to life is the responsibility of government in seeing that machineries are put in place for the right to be achieved. But this is a system we have where the judiciary itself is muzzled by, one, the fact that you don't get the resources directly. I see a judge today that is dependent completely from the executive arm before he gets his pay. I see the judiciary as not totally independent. And most times, you throw, the society throw the blame, on the table of judiciary. But most times when you get close and look at the way and working of the system, you will discover that even our judges themselves are not safe. It's a pathetic situation today where, because a judge keeps to his grounds, matters are transferred from his court to another court. A judge takes a drastic decision that is against the principle and belief of the administration. Tomorrow you don't assign 60 cases to him. The independence of judiciary is totally, completely destroyed. That today a judge will sit and tomorrow he's not there. So what are we talking about? What kind of society are we in? The rule of law is not respected. I sit as a judge and give an order, and tomorrow the order is flouted. We have seen situations where those who are elected into power choose the kind of judgment they will enforce. Justice is totally defined for the poor man and the common man, and for the connected and the unconnected. So that's the problem we have even with the judiciary today. So that it will take the grace of God in years to come for somebody to aspire to go to the bench. Our justice system has a lot of challenges. Those who are capable, those who have the hands and the ability to do that, you have to lobby for them to get there. Let's look at the current development. When there's a vacancy at the Court of Appeal, it took the entire region to go and lobby for somebody who has the capacity and ought to occupy that office, because the fate of that person can only be determined by the executive, even with the NJC. These are some of the problems we have. Today, these challenges we have can only be arrested if the rule of law is respected. And if those who are in authority play their role, they act, move, and take steps the way they would take for any other region or any other personality. So the rule of law is a problem. We don't respect the rule of law.
In other words, we are not patriotic.
We are not.
Now, what is the way forward for Nigeria? Is it politics? This is to Mr. Kolawale. Is it politics? Is it government? Is it being patriotic? What is the way forward for Nigeria?
Thank you very much. And my answer is all of the above.
Great. Give us reasons, please.
Politics affect every aspect of the nation. If you get it wrong at that level, it goes down and it's going to affect every sector of the economy. One of the problems we have in this country when it comes to the issues of development is the issue of capacity. The question you ask yourself is this: some of our leaders, do they have the capacity to be where they are today? I mean, you could imagine somebody that could not manage his personal finances. And you call such a person to come and manage a state or local government finances. You got it wrong. I think the issue of governance is a serious problem. And I was actually asking myself, at the point of independence, are we really prepared for the independence? And again, in the course of time, a lot of things happen. And a lot of people got into a position where they're not fit to be. So governors, we really need to look at it. We really need to look at the institutions of governance, personalities in the governance, and the process of coming to that position where they are. The electoral process needs to be reformed. If we get it right, because as the president alluded, ECWA president, that yeah, the follower will have our own shares of the blame. But I think the leadership, because the leadership dictates to the followership. So if you don't get it right at that level, it's very difficult for you and for this nation to move ahead. In terms of patriotism, is very, very important and key. Because most of the challenges we are having in this country today is because of the eroded value system that we have today. I mean, when you are talking, this morning I was just trying to remind myself as when we are back in the primary school. Every day you go to school, at the assembly, you need to do recite the national pledge. To be faithful
And loyal.
and loyal
And honest.
and honest. To defend Nigeria unity. But because of loss of confidence in the leadership, people are talking about disintegration today. Many people do not actually believe in the project Nigeria again. So that is why the issue of patriotism needs to come to play. Let me give you an example, sir. In 2008, you recall when we were having the financial crisis, for some of us that will remember, most of our foreign investors, you know what they did? From US, because they know that they are having challenges back at home. They came and withdrew their money so that they can fix their economy. So the economy is number one before any other economy. What is happening in Nigeria today? We take resources belong to you and I, and we're taking it to outside to go and fix their economy. And a lot of people are suffering in this country today. So the issue of patriotism play a key role. People are no longer loyal to their position, no longer loyal to their responsibility, no longer taking the responsibilities as the mandate that has been given to them by the people. So it's very, very important. So politics, the governance, I think I've mentioned part of the governance too. And the governance has to do with the capacity. I'm talking from the perspective of economy, seriously. That is very, very important. And I think the Prof alluded to that too. But again, people are actually talking. But the question is this. People you are talking to, do they really understand what you are talking to them, what they are saying? A lot of people are there talking every day, but they are not listening to what people are saying. And if this is not really, really addressed, it's really going to have for us to get out of where we are today. Earlier on, I mentioned the issue of budget. In fact, the sad things about this, I didn't mention that, is this. In that budget that I was talking about, we have a deficit of about 400 trillion naira, which is about 33% of the total budget. I remember I said 29% only was voted for capital expenditure. So which means we have gone ahead to borrow to finance recurrent expenditure. And you ask me, how will nations survive in that scenario? Currently, as I'm talking to you now, the Nigeria total debt is about 33 trillion naira, if not more by now. And we keep on compiling up debt for the generation to come. So you ask yourself, what is the fate of the generations to come? So governance is a very, very crucial instrument that will really help us to transform and for us to be able to achieve the dream Nigeria we are talking about. People are no longer concerned about the poor in the streets. what people are looking to, and you look at the interest too, and that has to do with the issue of patriotism too. The moment I'm able to satisfy my political interest, personal interest, I don't care about what happened to other people. As I'm talking to you today, we are lamenting the state of Nigeria. Some people are rejoicing because they are making fortune in this country today. And when you go to negotiate on behalf of other people, and the government will tell you, okay, this is what I'm going to do for you, this is what I'm going to do for you, you keep quiet. Forgetting there are other people that you are representing. So governance, politics, patriotism, very, very crucial for the development of this nation.
Dr. Nanjuma, do you have a different opinion, or you are in the same opinion as me?
Yeah, I actually have something contrary to what has been said. Yes, I agree with the fact that the three plays a greater role. Where did we get it wrong? But the greatest of them all is patriotism. Now, if patriotism is love for a nation, let us look at whether we truly love this nation and whether we deserve to love this nation. I have said it to my political colleagues that an average Nigerian, what does he need? The greater population of Nigerians live in the rural areas. Honestly, most of them, they are not really involved in governance of the states. What they need might not even be light. What they need may be just fertilizer to go to their farms and farm. And then they need good roads and some sort of transportation to take their goods to the market and sell. The artisans, what do they need? They just need power. To power their machines. The barber needs power to be able to power his clipper to the hairdresser. How is it difficult to make this thing available to the Nigerian people? I don't think those things are too expensive, but it boils down to the fact that we are not patriotic. And I give it to this house that I differ from what my colleague here have said, that he puts the blame to the leadership. I put the greater blame to the followership. Now let me buttress my point. The followership are the people that elect the leaders. Am I right or wrong? Now, how many of us, to be honest with you, how many of us go to vote? How many of us have our voter card? How many of us, in the temptation of selling our voter's card, resist that temptation? How many of us goes to the vote to cast our vote and stay there and defend our votes? Look at what happened in Edo. If the Edoians did not do what they did, you can imagine what would have happened. So it all boils down to ourselves. Now, let me tell you, even though our constitution is even defective, but the constitution also provides that if you have elected a leader and he is not performing, you can recall him. How many of us are recalling our leaders? How many? It has never happened. So the whole blame is on us. We are not doing our part as followers. The constitution makes it available. In fact, these leaders that you see, politicians that you see, I speak on their behalf. Most of these people that vie for offices, I can tell you to be honest, a lot of them are willing to serve their people. But when they go to that office, that is where the problem comes. Before you leave your house in the morning, how many people will line up with different excuses looking for money from you? In your office, they are there. Begging, begging, begging. And they will make you a god, a demigod in this surface act. They will tell you all manner of things, and you lose focus. The civil service itself, as a leader, you go, you want to work. They will tell you that, look, if you want to divert the whole money of this estate, they can do it for you. And nobody, it will be covered. It's not the politician that is willing to do that, but the technocrats. They know all the nooks and crannies of where to do a voucher for you. And then it will be sealed. EFCC cannot detect it. This is the problem. So what the problem of Nigeria is systemic. I used to say, what is guiding the other developed countries is systems that have been put in place. When I assumed office as a chairman of a local government, I insisted that all payments must be by bank transfer. But they told me it's not obtainable. They have to pay by cash. In fact, it was even difficult for us to get staff salaries paid through transfers. Otherwise, it has to be, you remember, it has to be table payment. And that is where corruption starts.
Wow. So if we are looking at that, we are bringing out the problems that everybody seems to be familiar already with. I want us to see if we can provide solution, because we are looking at what the way forward is. We are looking, is it politics? Is it government? Is it being patriotic? Talking about patriotism. Because one other thing that has befallen us is, if we want to make money as a nation and do the needful, insecurity is staring in the face. Foreign investors cannot come because they cannot feel safe investing in a country that cannot even protect its own citizens. So what should we do? What should we look at in the way of insecurity? What should we look at? Look at what is happening in Kaduna State, for instance. Why is it a particular portion of Kaduna State? Why is it not in the northern part of Kaduna State? Why is it not in other parts of Kaduna State, but the concentration is within a segment of the state? So if we are talking about way forward, if people are patriotic, but they are not protected, where would patriotism take us to? So what is the needful in the area of insecurity? I think I should start with the prof. He's been quiet for a while. You know, professors don't talk too much.
Unfortunately, I will not do much, being not a security expert. But I am a bit worried sometimes too when the progressive failure of the Nigerian system is discussed in aggregated terms. We have seen clearly from all we've been saying here that the real problem may not be just in the politics, it may not just be in the government, it may not just be in whatever. You know, there is something much deeper that we have to identify. And while reflecting on this independence anniversary, I was just hoping that we will be able to come to a consensus as to what really the problem is with Nigeria. We have seen local government states that one tribe, local government, 100% maybe one religion, local government. In fact, I know of a local government that is virtually like a family unit. You know, 5 people who sit in that local government and determine the direction that the local government moves in this country. And yet, we have not seen models of excellence in any of these spaces by reason of homogeneity of religion or tribe or family linkages and so on and so forth. And I'm tempted to think that there could be something deeper than just we are fighting for a new country, a new state, local government, and so on and so forth. Why is it difficult for us to be patriotic? Because even the issue of insecurity, you have spaces that you will have thought will be wonderfully secured. Because when this whole thing about Boko Haram started, you know, some of us that have lived in Borno State for a number of years knew what Borno State used to be. And it would have been unimaginable that within the same religion, something of this nature will crop up really and spread like it has done over the years. So I think that we have to go back to our individuals, just like the president of ECWA mentioned today. I think the secret for me will be if we agree to go back to our families and work hard to start the revival from our family units. If individuals will go back to their families, reconcile with their wives and children, bring those core values and productive efforts beginning from the family level, I believe that the easiest and the simplest thing for God to do is to set aside any leadership at any point. And that, of course, I think is what he has been doing. But if we have all these iniquities in our homes, we cannot as individuals stand out for any value. Nigeria has had the best policies. We were supposed to be celebrating Vision 2020 this year. It is well acclaimed. Even the World Bank recognizes that it was a well thought out policy statement. And before then, we have had policies. So what is wrong with this country? Are we ready to bring those conversations to the table? To see that it is you and me, because we cannot fail in our homes. We are not loyal in our homes. And we expect to be loyal to the nation's space. It's not possible. So while we are pointing fingers at people, we should know that the solution really starts from us, what we do in our homes with our children, how we run our individual economies, how we manage personal relationships one with another. I think if we start there, a lot of things will happen. Thank you.
Yeah. I know you have traveled wide, far, near, and all that, and from a very tender age, you know. People have money in your house, so you have been traveling for long.
Don't let kidnappers come after me.
So I would like to ask you, how can you differentiate the security you have seen in the UK, in the US, and the security you see in Nigeria, and where do you think we have missed it?
Okay, thank you. I would say security, as with other institutions of community and government that contribute to the overall well-being of individuals, is lacking in both capacity to understand how to engage. Security from policing that I have seen in other countries as compared to Nigeria is a situation where a policeman is not easily bribed. There are bad eggs everywhere. And a policeman truly, dutifully works to protect. There's also some level of community policing. So I'm glad you asked this question because I wanted to lend my voice to security as an issue right now. At the individual level, from the family level to the community level, we need to be more conscious of security problems. There's something called early warning systems or early warning signs. We may not be able to stop attackers in their droves on horsebacks carrying AK-47s. We may not be able to stop that at that level. But if we have early warning systems, we can come up with a response mechanism. My pain is when I see the butchered, mangled bodies of especially women and children, but mostly unarmed civilians who could not have escaped the attacks. If we think from strategies, war strategies, we are at war anyway. We believe we're at war with COVID, we're at war internally, you know, we're a nation struggling not to implode. It is necessary to have escape routes. These are not things that you can discuss very openly on public platforms. But a quick example, during the Second World War, Britain was ravaged by the war. Germany had the upper hand for the most part. Everybody went to war, the people were dying. However, something the British did at that time to especially secure unarmed individuals, especially those really vulnerable because of their age, was to build bunkers, for instance. I'm not saying this is the exact strategy we should adopt, but we should be able to learn. So I attend community meetings where I am, for instance, and I hardly hear a lot of discussions around these strategies. Excuse me. It's not COVID, it just started. It's allergies. We need to raise the consciousness of individuals, men, women, and children, to also learn self-protection. I have children, and from ages 5, they learned karate. There's nothing wrong with that. We hear stories in Plateau State where an individual actually saved the lives of 3 people, did not only disarm about 3 attackers, but unfortunately ended 1 or 2 lives, but in self-defense, right? Because he learned self-defense. And in our villages, I don't sense that we have this consciousness to either even consider some level of community policing. We have vigilantes here, but real community policing, and setting the agenda from the family level to the community level, where we talk security and what we could do. We've done that in my house. Different places where we live, we say, if we're attacked, what do we do? Where do we run to? Even if it's an armed robbery attack, not even, the very aggressive, high-scale, genocidal attacks that we experience. But even at the level of somebody intruding in your home, what do? We need to have these conversations at the community level. Then we need to have a lot of advocacy. There are fundamental human rights to every living, human, breathing being. The 9-year-old baby that is butchered to death has rights. Right to life is one. And those individuals who are responsible for providing some level of protection should do it. Where we are now, we cannot completely depend on the security forces. We need to help them to help us. So we need to raise our consciousness and have these conversations and decide at the family and community level and clamor for community policing to some level. If it is legalized in, let's say, some of the Southern Kaduna communities, then individuals will be allowed to bear arms, for instance, legally. So I believe it's something we need to do. Otherwise, vulnerable people in our communities will just keep getting attacked and dying like flies, completely helpless. Another aspect of advocacy, and everybody should speak up. The 11-year-old child, boy, girl, in Southern Kaduna village or a village anywhere in this country should be able to say, I have the right to be protected and I have the right to justice. And from ECOWAS, from the regional level, if the Nigerian government does not help, and I'm loyal to the Nigerian government, 100%, but if the Nigerian government does not help you to give you justice, you can go to the regional courts, ECOWAS. It doesn't look at anybody's face. It doesn't look at the leadership in your country. Get lawyers and let them begin to speak up. There was a time driven by raw emotions, I actually told the community, look, if you are attacked so much and you feel choked, why don't you secede? But not secede in a way that you're rebellious, but actually write that you want your own sovereignty. Then you will have the right to protect yourself at all levels. And the whole world can come down and support you in protecting yourself if another country is invading you. But it is just to get us to think at that level. That's what we need to do. We often hear that 2% of people think, 3% of people think that they think, 95% of people rather die than think. And we need to change that. We all need to be thinkers. And with early warning systems, let's look at the patterns of the attacks, how they come. Sometimes we hear their notices sent out, or there are feelers here and there. Within your community level, you can engage with security agencies, the police, whether it is Operation Safe Haven or whichever one is in place. You can engage with them to empower you to understand how to design or identify or come up with early warning systems so that we can save more lives while we are having discussions at the very top level. Asking the question, who is ruling this country? Who is allowing people from other countries to come into our country. Why is this happening? Paradigms do not change because we do not ask questions. And one of the purposes of education is for us to be able to question our environment and say this is not right, this cannot continue to happen. And we desire a different result, a different future, which begins from now. So in terms of security, I believe that we are very mundane, very laid back about this. Rather than being reactive and crying, putting our hands, I'm not tired of sharing videos about what has happened. I'm more interested in what are we doing to forestall it.
Sure.
From the family level down all the way to the United Nations level, we can speak up and to prevent, because prevention is better than cure. At the security level also, lack of proper enlightenment and education at all levels, from the security forces to the communities. There's something called United Nations Security Council Resolution. Sorry, I'm bringing in the gender element. United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 is about the handling of women, which actually also applies to other unarmed civilians in conflict situations. And it came up with 5 very simple pillars. The first pillar is protection, to protect women and children in any conflict situation. We have actually used this. I have used it to secure justice for certain individuals who are attacked even by people bearing arms who are legally security agents. So protection of people who are armless, especially women. Then participation, increasing the participation of women in decision-making positions. Then prevention, which is the other big element and pillar of that particular resolution. And Nigeria is a signatory to that resolution. And there are several other resolutions and charters that Nigeria is a signatory to. We need to know our rights so that we will demand our rights and we demand that they be given to us. Now, prevention is about prevention of conflict. And it says everybody, especially women and youth, should be involved in the design of any prevention strategy in any conflict situation. Then the 4th pillar is relief. It says we should offer relief with a gendered lens. Sometimes when there's a crisis, people are displaced, we get rice, Maggi, mattresses, and take that. But oftentimes, we do not take sanitary towels. There are women who are pregnant. We don't take dignity kits. We don't take even the mobile toilets, because a 13-year-old girl who has just started her period will be very uncomfortable in an open field. How does she even clean herself? So it says we should offer relief with a gendered lens. Then the 5th is about recovery. That in economic recovery, we should identify these individuals who are vulnerable in our communities, especially women and youth, and begin to empower them so that they're able to help the economy grow. We all know that the micro and small, medium sector contributes about 70% of the economy in terms of driving the economy. So if we adopt these pillars and implement them, we're able to move forward. There's the Violence Against People's Prohibition Act. There is the Gender and Equal Opportunity, which is for both genders, because men are also disenfranchised in many situations. Some of these bills and charters were signed at the national level. We paid some people well, flew them with private jets to go and sign these charters. They came back to Nigeria. Some of them are just sitting in the National Assembly or the state governments. And the saddest part is that people, you and I, and people in the villages who should know and access these rights or justice, do not even know. So we need to be able to, as a community, in terms of security, going beyond, if you see something, say something, but actually begin to strategize and have these conversations. I wanted to quickly say something about education, with all due respect to the prof. Yes, we have an increased number of physical structures at different levels, pre-tertiary and tertiary. But something we didn't get right, which we obviously see now, is the quality of education and the quality of teaching. It's been said that Nigerians are probably overread. My children have attended schools that are outside the Nigerian system. I have attended schools in the Nigerian system, and so have I. And I agree that yes, we're loaded with so much book, there's so many things we need to learn. And I have seen teachers who are passionate about teaching. I also teach as well. You remember when we met, I was lecturing. So, but the quality of teaching is something that is we need to look at. The teaching profession is less attractive than political office. If it was the reverse, where anyone who wants to be a teacher will get the proper training and quality, then the person gets a house. Like we heard before, many years ago, maybe in the 60s or 70s, they get a house, they get, the basic things that will make them comfortable so that they focus rather than running away. And in the US, I've seen Nigerians who could add value to Nigeria, but they're substitute teachers, highly educated individuals, but would rather stay there and earn less than minimum wage in the US of maybe $7 an hour. Because if you put it together, it's over 100,000 at the end of the month. And a teacher who's been teaching for 10, 50 years in Nigeria probably will not even get that. So the quality of education is something else that we need to look at. We have also our literacy levels that we're struggling with. Enrollments have continued to decline. As at a few years ago, we had, as at 2015, we had 10 million out-of-school children. For instance, I'm talking pre-tertiary education. And out of that, of course, 60% are girls, which means more girls are out of school. I'm part of a World Bank committee that is looking at promoting or increasing the number of enrollments in school across different states and across a number of regions. And we've made comparisons. I've been to Maiduguri, I came back recently. Beautiful schools. In fact, I saw some schools, I was like, is this a hotel? I said, no, it's a school. And the issue is the people who are in the school and the quality of people who teach. But now coming back to the quick point I wanted to make, education. We have, Prof will probably have the indices of our literacy levels. Between 2015 and 2020, our literacy levels have not decreased. And that's the truth. You can get it also from UNICEF. And transitioning means how many children are moving from primary school to secondary school to JS1, and how many children are moving from JS3 to SS3. As it grows, it's like a funnel that continues to decrease. So in terms of literacy levels, even with the physical appearance in school, we're not doing well at that level, and we need to do something about it. I'm a strategist, so I come from the angle of you identify the problem before you get the solution, because the solution is actually in the problem. If you understand the problem and you mirror the problem positively, you will find the solutions. I had also wanted to quickly mention about governance. Our governance is very top-down. It's very top-down. The president has said, the governor has said, the leader has said. When do we get feedback from bottom up? We are very prescriptive in our strategies and our policies. Some states are making a change, they're trying, but really to sit down and decide that a particular local government needs water at this time first, then needs more schools at that time, is extremely dangerous. We've been doing that, and that's how come a few people can sit in a particular corner. I did some projects in Otoko in 2016, and I realized then, we did some due diligence. The local government was getting 53 million every month, and there's hardly a motorable road in that place. I was wondering, where is the 53 million going? Of course, we understood the dynamics later, that we're riddled with corruption. And sometimes when you have even good people in some of these offices, you just go with the flow for them to survive or remain in these offices. Now, if governance was inclusive, if people were included, men, women, and youth, the very key demographics, and people with disabilities, included in deciding what projects are even priority in some communities, we'll have better local governments, and we'll have better, because all tiers have specific responsibilities that they take. So our leadership is very top-down. Governance, which is closely related to leadership. Leadership also should be adaptive. Our leadership isn't very adaptive. We've learned, maybe we've been PAs or assistants or secretaries or handled positions, corridors of power, then when we get the chance to sit in those positions, we're just going back to paradise. We're just doing the usual thing. But if even for good people, I'm not saying everybody in leadership is corrupt. Now, where the adaptive or lack of being adaptive comes in is that we don't think outside the box. Let's change with the times. There's a positive flow in terms of technology. Right now, we're in the 5th industrial revolution. And what are we doing about it? If a budget, 30%, I'll give them credit and say 30% of the budget is looking at capital expenditure. Capital, which means projects, things that will actually develop us, to give us more electricity, better roads, better schools, the things that we want. If that's the amount, then where are we going to invest, say, in technology, for instance? And almost everything now is technology-driven. In fact, when I got the invitation for this program, I asked whether it was going to be physical or online, because that's what we are now used to. This is the new normal. Fortunately and unfortunately for us, from about 4 or 5 years ago in my organization, we were already running a lot of programs and running offices like 60-70% online. So being forward-thinking and being strategic again and again and again, I will say, will help us from the individual level. So even adaptive leadership has to do with personal leadership. How are you adapting as a Nigerian to what we have, the current situation? And our solutions need to be holistic. I think it would be unfair to say it's only politics that can fix the nation, or it's only, in particular, it should be multi-pronged in terms of approach. But the biggest that I will pick, even though politics, yes, it's like oxygen, you either play it or you get played by it, is economy. If we fix the economy, we're able to, because we're already almost in an anarchist state. That's the truth, almost a lawless state. If people are beginning to kill other people to eat, sell other people to eat, steal food, we're degenerating. So the economy, if you fix the economy, make Nigerian graduates more employable. In fact, this brochure is from a program we just finished, because for about 2 decades, we realized that a lot of Nigerian graduates are not even employable. I've employed some in my organization and I had to let them go. They were not productive. We seem to be activity driven. And we have this zombie mentality, sit in the office and wait to be told what to do. But we won't think that if I am an assistant, this is what I need to do. Like in terms of reference, job description, and I do a work plan every week so that I have specific results I achieve to support my boss and support my organization. We hardly have that orientation. So we need that value reorientation, but honestly, from the security level to the economic level, we have to try to help ourselves.
Wow. You've spoken so well. It was so well that it took us to the closing time. But I will just take 1 minute from each one of you to tell me the way forward and wish Nigeria whatever you want to wish Nigeria at 60. So I'll start with Mr. Kolawole all the way down to Connect.
Thank you very much. I think a lot has been said, but I think we still need to believe in the systems. The patriotism is a key issue here. Our government, they have a role to play. The follower will have a role to play. And I think if we're able to do it together and we believe in it, then we'll be able to take this country to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. Barrister.
Well, I would say that I think one of the things that we have to look at as a nation is not just communal patriotism, original patriotism. We should have a national patriotism in the sense that the life of every citizen, the well-being of every citizen matters. And way forward, we should go away from the old practice. Recently, there's a call for submission of memoranda. We had the confab in 2014. That was where the first time the entire nation met and decided the way forward. That was abandoned. Let us not start a project that will never complete. As a nation, we still have a long way to go. The exercise is now going on for the recruitment of policemen. What is the database that we have in terms of security? How are we sure we're not getting criminals back into a system to take care of us? NDLA, civil defense will still start recruitment. What are the database when it comes to issue of the details concerning individuals? Our borders are so porous. What are we doing? In developed countries, when you fail, you retire or you resign honorably. Here, when you fail, you sit on power and you continue. Let us imbibe policies where leaders will be held responsible. Why you fail? In serving as a leader, you should be accountable. I trust that with the way the nation is going, there will be hope. There will be hope. Only when somebody who is so common will see his life as relevant to that of somebody else who is there in a palace or in an office. I read something that I almost went into tears when somebody said their chief was slaughtered, murdered. There was nothing that was done to honor that chief. But somebody else died and a public holiday was declared. Why is it patriotism? The life of every Nigerian matters. I pray God will help us as a nation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Time is fast spent. I wouldn't want to dwell in so many things. Just to sensitize us a little bit, to be very, very aware of what is happening, because we have mentioned a lot about patriotism, but let us look at what is happening in Nigeria today. Really, regarding security, is it that, are we in a war? I think people should be able to understand. Are we in a war? Are some people pursuing an agenda? And if some people are pursuing an agenda, then what is our role as a church to stop that? Because in this agenda, a lot of us are falling victims because we are compromising. When it comes to security, there's no grammar. I said it as it is. But overall, I want to believe that there is hope for Nigeria. The other developed countries that you see them, America that you see it today, you don't know what they passed through before they reach this level. So I believe we are still crawling, but we'll stand strong by the grace of God. Thank you.
Well, the light of hope shines brightest at the darkest hour. I believe there is light at the end of the tunnel. Whatever we do, let us keep that light shining until the end of time. There is always time and season in the history of the world. You find out that there will be depressions, there will be up times, there will be down times. I think what has not changed and what will not change is how we respond to these times. And so what is happening now, I believe, is not unusual because it will always be here anyway. If it is no pandemic, economic recession, tomorrow it will be some other thing else. And so my passing words is to speak specifically to the individual response, particularly our young people and our students out there. Please, let's keep our heads up. The future belongs to us. Let's begin to see how we can take the advantage of even what is happening now to reorganize ourselves better. Perhaps it may be that we need to learn some new skills, make better use of our times. Some of us need to start agriculture, for instance, which we were not doing. Others, we have to do more research with our personal time because we are also transiting to a knowledge economy. If you have stuff in your head, you are already wealthy. And I think that times like this, silent moments like this, are opportunities also to build our faculties and intellect. For Nigeria, I wish us more unity and faith, peace and progress in line with the motto that has been given to us by founding fathers. Thank you.
I have a very quick story. We gave 3,000 to a 19-year-old girl. Her name is Nerat. She is very active in church. She's in the choir. But she used that 3,000 to buy one measure of rice. Excuse me. One measure of rice, one fish. She bought some Maggi seasoning, cooked the rice, took it to a place where there are artisans and started selling. One plate, 100 naira. If you want fish or meat, 50 naira. She came back with the money for about a week. Every day, she gave me. I picked one old phone box and put the money inside. Each day, the least she came back with was 1,500. Within that month, she was grossing 38,000 naira monthly from the very first month. Fast forward a few years, she paid her school fees. She went to rewrite her papers, paid the school fees. While she was waiting, went for computer studies. She paid from money from the business. Fast forward a few years later, a colleague met her at a bank her daily gross, without exaggeration, I think it's about 100,000 naira, and she's in Jos. Daily gross that she takes to the bank every day. She does one bag of rice in 2 or 3 days. She has included other condiments. She has employed 2 of her older sisters who are graduates. And she will soon finish her HND in Bauchi. She wants to be a teacher. She did her OND, still running that business. Of course, it suffered a number of times, but 3,000 naira seed money. So that is to say that we as youth, we can help ourselves. I'm not from a poor background, but I finished paying my secondary school fees because I did weekend work once a week, about 3 hours. That was all, and I earned money. And I was able to buy my books and help myself. So let us not be entitled as young people. Look inwards. There are businesses we can start with 0 naira. Car wash, doing hair. You'll be surprised at how much people make from this. And with 200 naira, you can start a business. Ice block business. I've even done it. A retired superintendent of prisons used ice block and pure water money to train children in the US, doing business from Nigeria. So let's look inwards. Government does not provide jobs. Government's work is to provide policies that will create the opportunity for the jobs to be created. There's a young man who from his home makes money by just doing research, building a workshop for other people, and they pay him, even sitting at home. Look at opportunities, trends, good or bad, provide opportunities. Now more people are going into delivery services. If we begin from that angle of trying to heal the economy and getting each and everyone economically empowered one way or another, we begin to heal other aspects as well, because people are hungry, and a hungry man is an angry man. Our youth have been radicalized, even from our communities in Jos, into cults, into gangs, some into Boko Haram or more serious and deadly groups. It's happening. So to reduce that radicalization, let's begin to look inwards as youth to help ourselves. And I believe that Nigeria is a great nation. I am proud to be a Nigerian. Let us turn our seeming tragedy of a very bad economy and all the complaints we've made into our success. Let us use that. China did, and where are they today? Oh, by the way, our per capita income right now in Nigeria hovers between $250 and $400 a month. The ideal is $1,400 a month. China right now is at $4,000 plus a month. Because the average Chinese can do projects, can support others, can create their business, can travel the world over. We need to get Nigeria to that level. And it's you and I who will do it. And remember, you have power. As long as you have influence, you have power. From 1 person to 2 people to 3 people. It is not people in authority that have power. They have authority and some level of power, but most of the power is with you and I. So what we decide to do with that power today determines how hopeful we can be in Nigeria and where Nigeria will be when we meet again maybe this time next year to discuss how far we've come. Thank you, and God bless you.
Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for honoring us with your presence this from the early hours of today all the way till now. It's almost 2 o'clock. I'm very grateful to have you. On behalf of the ECWA executive, I thank you so much for honoring our invitation. This is how far we can take it today on Hope for Nigeria, what's the way forward. As a Nigerian, as a citizen, as an individual, wherever you are, I would want you to stand up and make a change in your life. What are you doing? It's not enough. Ask yourself, what else can I do to help myself? I am so happy with the platform ECWA Television is giving to us to make our ministry more relevant in the midst of a chaotic nation and environment. I thank the ECWA executive for their untiring support keeping ECWA Television on air, and we thank our pastors and all ECWA members nationwide. I'm going to call on the ECWA General Secretary to give us the vote of thanks and the closing remarks / the closing prayer. Then we take the National Anthem by Panam Bande.
Well, on behalf of the ECWA President and the rest of us in the EE, we want to thank you, beautiful and wonderful audience, for being very good audience today. And this is a starting point where we contribute to nation building in our own small way as a denomination. And I hope that by the time we do this again next year, we would have improved on what we did today. We want to thank all panelists that have taken their time to discuss Nigeria today. May God bless you and increase you richly. Let us pray. Our Father, we are very grateful to you for bringing us to the end of this wonderful program. You've heard us talk about Nigeria. You've heard us talk about the people of Nigeria. We pray, oh Lord, that you help that our country will make progress. By the time we'll meet here again next year, may we be able to look back and say that at this anniversary, we've made a leap in progress. Dismiss us with your richest blessing. In Jesus' name we pray.
Let's stand up as we take the national anthem.
All right, at the count of 3, can we start? 1, 2, 3, sing. Arise, O compatriot, Nigeria's call obey, to serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve